Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers win Game 2 against the Washington Capitals. They win at Madison Square Garden by a score of 4-3. This was definitely a much more even game than Game 1. Not too surprised by that. You knew Washington was going to come out really desperate. It was a much better effort from the Capitals. And look, it came down to the very end. It was not one of the Rangers' better games, but you take any playoff win you can get. And for the Rangers to go up 2-0 and to hold serve at home is really important. But, now you move to Washington, and look, this is a much different situation than the last two series I'm going to talk about. But the last two series, 2023 first round versus the Devils, and then 2022 Eastern Conference Final versus the Lightning, the Rangers were up 2-0 in both those series and lost. I'm not really concerned that they'll lose this series. It's more so, will they be able, as I've said kind of from the beginning, the question is not so much will the Rangers win the series, but how quickly can they do it? And I do think it's going to be tough to win in Washington. The Capitals are a much better home team, but realistically, the goal, obviously you want to win each game, obviously, but it doesn't, usually it doesn't work out that way. So being able to split games 3 and 4 and getting back to MSG up 3-1, that, like I've said all along, that's the blueprint. And it'll serve the Rangers very well to do so, if you want to make a deep run into the playoffs. So just wanted to, again, bring that up because, the Capitals, it's not a very good team, like for playoff standards. It's, definitely nothing special. However, Spencer Carberry, I'm pretty impressed by him as a first-year head coach. He definitely, I think, deserves some votes for the Jack Adams trophy. I don't even think he'll probably end up in the top 3. I don't, without having really thought about it too much, but I think that he is getting as much out of that team as he can with not a whole lot there. And Alex Ovechkin really, really, it's been a rough first 2 games for him, to say the least. He's been more of a negative than a positive for Washington. But I think that they're capable. That Washington crowd, they can get going, with the whole Rock the Red. So this is not going to be, a cakewalk to a series victory as I see it. And I would be, obviously there's a way that things happen, because I've said this before, I'll be happy if XYZ happens. But then when it does happen, it's kind of like, well, I didn't know this was going to happen. So, but I'll say it right now, generally speaking, get back to MSG up 3-1. Don't have this be a 2-2 series. And hey, so far, mission accomplished for what was done in the first 2 games. Sure, game 1 was a little bit better than this one, but I think some Ranger fans are a little bit upset about how this one went. And sure, there's some things to discuss there, but for me, it's more about just getting the victory, moving forward, and that's the key here. So it was the same lineup for the Rangers in this one, which is no surprise. Looking ahead to Game 3, I would expect it to be the same lineup again. You do wonder, as far as this game went, where Matt Rempe was basically the hero in Game 1. This game, he did take a penalty, which led to a Washington power play goal. I think that everything being equal, you would be more likely to see Rempe in a home game than a road game. Now, I don't know if the coaching staff really thinks about that, but the crowd loves him and kind of feeds off the energy. I think it definitely works to the Rangers' advantage when he's on his game at home, especially. All of this said, I think since the Rangers won the first 2 games, I don't think that they're going to mess with anything. I think they'll keep it the same, but it always does remind me that Rempe, he will be someone that I think is in and out of the lineup depending on the situation. So if there was one change to be made, it would be that, although my gut tells me that he'll stay in. For Washington, Vincent Iorio got hurt last game. Not a surprise he was not in Game 2, and still not back was Nick Jensen or Rasmus Sandin. So Lucas Johansson made his playoff debut for the Capitals. That's the thing. They are so beat up. It's ridiculous. So, you have Johansson and McIlrath not playing a whole lot, And John Carlson played 30 minutes and 49 seconds, just ridiculous. So he has just been, I mean, it wasn't even an overtime game, and he's playing more than half, of the game for Washington. So it's a lot of Carlson and, Faravari, Van Riemsdyk, and Alexiev. They're just going to ride, like I said last episode, they're going to ride them until it's all said and done. But let's just jump right into it. Definitely a lot to discuss in this one. There was one controversial sort of moment that we'll get into and what it might mean moving forward. But, I'll say the officiating just, even though it's advantageous to the Rangers for there to be penalties called, right? Because the Rangers are a pretty good special teams club. They just are. In this game, it was kind of a mixed bag, is the way I'd put it. I mean, I think it was more of a positive than a negative for the Rangers, but it wasn't all great. Either way, I just wish that there was more of a flow to these games. I mean, this one, it's like there's just so many penalties really in each period, and it kind of just, I don't know, just from a watching standpoint and just getting a good evaluation, it's kind of hard to do so with the way that it's gone down. Wes McCauley, who I'm not a huge fan of, he was the one of the refs for tonight's game. So, but first period, Washington gets off to a pretty good start. Really a much better start than last game, even though I thought that the Caps' first period in game one was not all that bad. But in terms of offensive generation, and the Caps did a much better job of providing a little bit more speed and doing a little bit more job of getting to the Rangers zone, some odd man rushes. It was a definite improvement. And the Caps do score 5:09 in. It's Connor McMichael scoring his first goal of the series unassisted. So what happens here is Dylan McElrath just from about the red line shoots it in, goes around the boards, and the three players that I guess I'll mention that probably could have done a better job as far as maybe a little more physical and not so much trying to stick check was Keandre Miller, Vincent Trocheck, and probably to a lesser degree Ryan Lindgren. As what ends up kind of happening is I think Ovechkin's kind of along the boards. It goes off of Miller's stick and onto the stick of TJ Oshie. He takes it towards the net. And, I think Trocheck was trying to poke it away, and ultimately the puck is loose. Lindgren's kind of in front, and McMichael just buries it. So it just didn't love that defensive effort overall, but as the Rangers normally do, and this is where I give them so much credit, they're able to respond in some way, shape, or form, and it happens by a goal. And Carberry brought up some good points that I hadn't thought of as, you're thinking about it more from the Washington, he's looking more from the Washington perspective, but some key icings that the Caps took that eventually in some way, shape, or form hurt them to the point where the Rangers eventually scored off it. So at 7:56, Trocheck kind of makes up for what I saw as not a great shift by him. Trocheck scores his first of the series from Eric Gustafsson. So this was a play, a face-off win by Trocheck, and that's just part of his game. It's so important, and he just he's such a versatile player. Trocheck, such a valuable player. But Gustafsson does a nice job, shows a little bit of patience, and they were paying a little bit too much attention to Panarin, kind of left Trocheck open, and Gustafsson puts it on the tape of Trocheck, and he tips it in over Charlie Lindgren. So that ties it up at 1 with, less than 3 minutes after the Caps took a 1-0 lead. So then the penalties start coming. At 10:26, Jacob Trouba is called for interference against Tom Wilson. But the Rangers do kill it off. And then let's see what happens here. At 13:02, Nicolas Aube-Kubel hooks Trocheck. So that's the good thing. So Trocheck, while he does take his fair share of penalties, he's also got to be up there as far as drawing them as well. And he did that, and he drew a couple in this game. So, and he's a part of the goal that scored. So it's funny. The Rangers scored 2 power play goals tonight, but really the first unit was not good at all. Not nearly good enough. So this one was kind of a combination of the first unit and the second unit. So Zibanejad, Trocheck, and Kreider were still on, whereas Fox and Panarin got off, and Gustafsson and Lafreniere come on. So there's a little bit of a board battle won by the Rangers where Lafreniere gets it over to Trocheck. Trocheck shows a little bit of patience, finds an open Zibanejad, and Zibanejad with a nice shot deflects off the glove of Alexiev and past Lindgren. So it's Zibanejad with the goal on the power play from Trocheck and Lafreniere. So Rangers take a 2-1 lead there. Then at 15:57, TJ Oshie is called for holding Artemi Panarin. And this would not be the last that we would hear of Oshie and Panarin, as they were going at it basically all game. Unfortunately, though, 28 seconds into the power play, Chris Kreider is called for cross-checking Trevor Van Riemsdyk. So this happened a couple times in this game where Ranger power plays were stopped. So that's, I guess, in some ways where the numbers are a little misleading, although I really didn't love the first power play unit. But Kreider, takes a penalty there. He's done that a time or two. And look, I think if this game was officiated a certain way, you probably let that go. But it was kind of consistent with everything else. And so it becomes 4-on-4. No scoring comes to that. And the Rangers have a 2-1 lead after the first. So last game it was tied. This game the Rangers have a 1-goal lead. We go to the second period. And that's where Matt Rempe takes a penalty. So at 3:44, Rempe roughs Lucas Johansson. And it's a combination of things with Rempe and the penalties. It's in part the refs they have an eye on him, almost unfairly so. And for Rempe, it's like he's got to just get better, technically. And he's a big guy. And I know the intentions are basically, as I see it, mostly pure. And obviously you don't want to take a penalty, but he just has to figure it out, is all I can say. So it's a little bit twofold, where I think he needs to be a little bit smarter in terms of the way he's hitting with someone, but I think it's also unfair the way that the refs are kind of calling on him too. And unfortunately, from that, the Caps do score pretty quickly into the power play off of an odd-man rush. That's the thing. The Rangers, when it's in their own zone, they're very good at applying pressure, but they're not so good. And the Capitals got them on a quick transition. And it's Dylan Strome, brother of Ryan Strome, who scores the power play goal, assisted by Tom Wilson and Max Pacioretty. Really nice pass by Wilson. Trouba was kind of trying to stop the pass from going from Wilson to Strome, was unable to do so. Again, it's interesting. As far as Igor Shesterkin's night goes, it was he wasn't really tested that much. The goals that he gave up, really, I can't blame him for. It's not to say he made any. He did make actually a couple of good saves. I thought he was fine, but that ties it up at 2. And then there's the response. The Rangers don't score off it, but at 4:34. Ferravari interferes with Lafreniere, but the Rangers don't score on that power play. Then at 10:34, Carlson cross-checks Trocheck, and on this one, they do score. Now, what I want to say is, I can't remember when it was chronologically within the second, there was a missed high stick where Panarin was high stick by TJ Oshie, and they didn't call it. So I want to say that as a precursor to what's to come in the third, but towards the end of the power play, the second unit scores, and it's Jack Roslovic, his first goal of the series, and it's actually his first, even I believe including his time with Columbus, his first power play goal of the season from Gustafsson and Lafreniere. So another secondary assist for Lafreniere. And that's kind of the funny thing, is that because these were both power play assists, if he was on the number one power play unit, his point totals would have been pretty insane this year. But it was another nice play by Gustafsson, and I guess for him there was some good and some bad in this game. We'll talk about that with Gustafsson, but it was, I would say, more good than bad, to be honest. The offense that he brought was really valuable, and Jack Roslovic just takes a shot, and it's not a great goal by Lindgren. I think Lindgren was probably a little bit too far in his crease, but not many players would have been able to do that, and it kind of reminded me of a goal by Erik Christensen. The Christensen one was probably even a worse angle. It was a goal in the playoffs in 2011. I think it was a very similar situation. It was and honestly, their skill sets are they're kind of more offensive minded, don't provide a lot of defense, but they do have skill. And it was a nice wrist shot that he just kind of found room. And look, Jack Roslovic's not going to get a whole lot of ice time, especially when it does become a game where you do see a lot of penalties. And it's good to see in limited ice time, he's done what he's had to do, and he gets that goal to make it 3-2. Then Gustafsson takes a penalty at 15:40 delay game. But the Rangers score a shorthanded goal. It's been a thing that they've done lately that's been really, really helpful. And it's another defenseman, as we sort towards the end of the season, where Schneider versus the Islanders, Fox versus the Senators, now it's Keandre Miller versus the Caps. He scores assists to Zibanejad and Kreider. And Mika deserves a lot of the credit. Really, for me, Mika Zibanejad, he was the number one star, but I would say unequivocally Zibanejad was the best player of this game. He steals it from Ovechkin and passes it to Kreider. Kreider gives it back to Zibanejad, and Mika, who must have heard, either he just had a great awareness or heard Keandre coming in. And we've seen that before. We've seen the Zibanejad-Miller combo work a number of times this season. And it happens here, and Miller streaks on in, and just a nice wrist shot past Lindgren. Keandre's been really good. I like that Miller-Schneider pair a lot. We're going to talk about something that bothers me a little bit towards the end, but the Miller-Schneider pair, very thankful that they made that switch. But for Mika, this is good. I think he's looked good these two games. I think in general, he was coming on towards the end of the season. If he can be a big force in these playoffs, the Israeli season is completely forgotten about. So I'm hoping that for him. Rangers take a 4-2 lead. So again, going to the third period, a 2-goal lead for the Rangers. In the third, at 6:47, Connor McMichael is called for roughing on Artemi Panarin, and this is what happened. And it's caused a little bit of controversy. So Artemi Panarin, he hits TJ Oshie in the head, and Oshie actually had to leave the game. How they have spotters. And, and I agree with them. He kind of looked dazed. He would come back. Oshie would come back. So they checked for concussion, and it wouldn't happen. And I'll say this, and this is not defending Panarin. TJ Oshie is sneakily a dirty strong, but I'll use that for lack of a better word. Oshie, he can be a bit dirty at times, so he can get under other players' skin. And look, Panarin knew what he was. I'll put it this way: Panarin knew what he was doing, but it was. I don't think it's suspension worthy. Do I think that there should have been a penalty on him? I do. It was a little bit surprising to see the Rangers were on the power play. I don't think it was a 5-minute major. I don't. But could you have called 2 minutes for, I don't know what it would have been, but I could have understood that, to be honest with you. And so the Rangers end up on a power play. But yeah, there'll be some talk about the Panarin hit. I don't believe it'll end up in a suspension. That said, he kind of did leave his feet. It wasn't. Again, it was more like a back check. He kind of just put his back, and maybe there was a little bit of elbow contact, but, I think it all adds up to nothing. But hey, for Artemi, it wasn't really a great game for him. I wouldn't say it was bad, but for Panarin, it's good to see him engaged, if nothing else. So Rangers don't score on that power play, though, and this is where the lack of killer instinct is a little bit frustrating, where they get another power play at 9:30. Nick Dowd is called for roughing Jimmy Vesey. But by the time that power play is over, and it wasn't that much left to it, too many men on the ice on the Rangers. And I think blame maybe goes to Gustafsson. I think he was the one that was jumping on. I'm sure it was more than just that, and I didn't get a good look at it, but I think he was the one that was coming on. And so, yeah, that's where it's annoying, where you can make it 5-2 on a couple of instances, and you don't. And then Alex Wenberg, pretty frustrating. He just makes a pretty bad play at the offensive blue line. I don't know what he was thinking about, just getting a little too cute. He turns it over, and eventually Caps get some zone time of their own in the Rangers' end, and Tom Wilson scores on a tip-in from LaPierre and Carlson. So LaPierre takes the shot, Wilson with a deflection, and nothing Igor could do about it. But yeah, that was, for Wenberg, it's like, you're a veteran. You're supposed to be a smart player. I didn't like that. And so it makes it 4-3. And so from then on, it gets a little bit scary. And the Capitals had their chances. Let's move forward to the 6-on-5. So Jimmy Vesey had a chance at the empty net, but it goes wide. So that was tough. That was with probably about 2:45 left, so it's an icing. And the Caps had some good chances, Ovechkin included, and the Rangers just could not get the puck out of the zone. Wenberg was a part of that as well. It was so frustrating. So it was Wenberg, Zibanejad, Kreider, with Lindgren and Trouba. And so that brings me up to the Lindgren-Trouba thing. Now, ideally, these guys wouldn't have been on the entire time. So let's understand that for a second. But Ling and Trouba is considered like the number one penalty kill D pair duo. And okay, that's one thing. But I understand why, but I don't love the fact that they are kind of seen as like, hey, at the end of the game, they are going to be the ones that are going to be on it for the most important times. You have Adam Fox. I don't care, like, that Trouba is a more physical defenseman. He's better at, like, it feels too lopsided. Like, to me, Fox, Miller, and then even Schneider, like, I want to, maybe Schneider to a lesser degree, but I don't think it should be so heavily lean upon Lindgren and Trouba, just because I think it hurts your ability to quite honestly get the puck out of the zone. I mean, look, sure, are those guys going to be better crease clearers? Yes. Are they going to be better along the boards? In theory, yes. But in terms of making little savvy plays to get the puck out of the zone, you're not going to really get that from them. And Miller's so good with the poke check. Fox is so adept at just kind of outsmarting you. And so I just wish it was a little bit more of an even distribution. I don't know that's going to happen. So that's something that I am a little bit concerned about, but I digress. But again, Wenberg, the problem was they got caught in their zone. It wouldn't have been like you would have seen different players than what it was. But part of the reason you might have been trapped in your zone was because of the personnel you had out there. But either way, Rangers are able to hang on for the 4-3 win. And that's really all that matters. And so now they will head to Washington, a couple days off. No games Wednesday or Thursday. They'll play Friday night at Washington. And you're going to get a pretty energetic crowd. Like, it's all hands on deck for the Caps at this point. And maybe at this point they'll get back one of Jensen or Sandin. Didn't happen yet, but for the Rangers, there has to be some thought process of, hey, against the Lightning, up 2-0, lose 4 in a row. Against the Devils, up 2-0, come back home, and then only win Game 6 and basically look like shit in most of the games they lost. So I just hope that, look, the results may not be there, but I hope that I come out of these games saying, hey, they gave it their best shot. It didn't work out. And not just, hey, like, the foot's not on the gas, because it needs to be. And I'm not saying you got to win Game 3, but if you don't win Game 3, win Game 4. That's what it is. And they're more than capable of doing it. But I just know that, look, I would love it, and it can happen. But I think if we're being honest, it's tough to sweep. It is. So I know I'm driving this thing home to death, but it's going to be important to win either Game 3 or Game 4. That is really what I'm hoping for. But so far, so good. Rangers, not as great an effort in Game 2. Capitals were, kind of, in my opinion, were much better than they had been in Game 1, which was to be expected. But the Rangers weathered the storm, did the job, come up with the win. They lead Madison Square Garden up 2-0 after their 4-3 win. And now they will head to Washington for Game 3 on Friday.